the best thing I ever heard about the pyramid was that it's a question machine. That
Wow.
the minute you start, I don't remember who said that, but the minute you start looking at the pyramid, you are given this riddle, and well, how did they do it? What's it for? Who made it? What are these chambers and the inside
First the
mean?
size, then the shape, then the measurements, then the articulations. Yeah, the more you look, the more the questions get weirder and
And all of
stronger.
a sudden, now listen, you're looking at Orion. Now you're looking at constellations. And
Wow,
then,
right.
Gary's work, where it's like the speed of light is encoded into measurements, and all of a sudden, it is this perfect tool to the way that a teacher. And I think it might have been in one of the Magical Egypts. I think it might have been you. Maybe it was in 2 or 3 the series 2. Talking about the idea that the best way for someone to learn something is that you figure it out on your own, and a really good teacher would be to give you a riddle.
Wow, right.
That you come to the realization that you solve it on your own, then you truly have gained that knowledge. I didn't just tell it.
Yeah, Jesus spoke in metaphor. All of those ancient teachers, and that's a function of the right brain, by the way. And also, I've been really, for some reason, having a David Lynch heyday, and it really struck me that he'll never comment on his films. And I just watched this little short film of his called The Tyranny of Language, and it's all about how a work of art dies when you say too much about it. Even choosing the wrong name or naming a work of art automatically creates a bunch of presuppositions. And the way you make a film stay alive is you never answer the question. Like when I see a film and it wraps up at the end and the boy and the girl go off together and they get all the money and everything's wrapped up in a neat little bow, I don't have to think about that anymore. And so that art project dies at the end of its life. With the David Lynch film, especially, I just rewatched Mulholland Drive. When there's films that don't answer your questions, I'm going to spend the rest of my goddamn life thinking about that movie because he withheld an answer from me. And so the much better way to learn is this way that in your left brain, it's just linear and hierarchical and it's just a list of data, but your right brain is dimensional associations and flowcharts and stuff like that. And the way to learn is by cementing a bit of information into your other synaptic webs. And so by far, as a method of transmitting information, allegory and symbol and visual images work naturally to the right brain. People who are memory experts that can memorize like 500 cards all at once or something, they do it by creating mental pictures. They clearly, if you listen to every one of them, it's the right brain that's capable of these works of genius feats of recall. And the way you do it is not by making a list in your head, that's the domain of the right brain, but it's by making this living, animated scene. There's a rabbit, he's wearing a blue hat, he walks over to the door, he turns the doorknob, he walks in. So by creating this thing that's entirely a property of your right brain, you can remember vast amounts of information. And so one of the things, bringing this back to the idea of art too, is that art is uniquely suited, and way better than linear language, to teaching you these fundamental insights. And the difference between knowledge and wisdom is how it relates to everything else. So this same bit of information presented to the left brain doesn't do much for you, but this bit of information planted in the right way in the right brain grows these roots of association everywhere. So people who understood the psyche and who understood the brain and who understood the polarities of the brain the best, it makes sense that they'd be the best teachers. And instead of explaining everything for you, they gave it to you in a series of riddles that you had to solve for yourself. Very much, oddly enough, weird coincidence, the language tapes called the Rosetta Stone, a bit of synchronicity for you. Rosetta Stone is such a good language teacher because they don't tell you. They give you options and they make it a game where you have to guess what these words mean. So it's speaking directly to your right hemisphere, which is the domain of the artist and the mystic. And so that was an especially interesting thing about studying the art of Egypt, is the art starts installing these ideas in your head.
Going back to McGilchrist, he had a talk one time where he talked about how, if you have to tell somebody the joke,
yeah, you've killed the joke.
It loses the whole joke, right? And some people have no sense of humor. Sort of one of those interesting things where some people just they have a bad sense of humor, and I think, in the same way that if you have to, which is sort of what we're doing here anyway, but when you explain the metaphor to somebody, you've kind of taken it, the same way if you have to explain the joke. The reason why, like, a double entendre in those things.
The third baseman is a Chinaman. He comes from the Wu family, spelled W-U. It just instantly stops the joke right there, doesn't it? No, I see. There's an understanding. It's this gentleman, Charles Wu. He's a Chinese man. He's on second base. No, Hu. Charles Hu. Never mind. I'm belaboring the point. You know what I'm trying to say.
Right. But I feel like in the same way that people can have no sense of humor, or be sort of sense of humor challenged, I think at some point human beings became metaphorically, we have no
Wow.
sense. We seem to have lost. We all seem to be sick on the day in English class or the day in literary class where they talked about parable and allegory and metaphor, because everybody seems to take everything literally. Every story they're trying to say, well, where did this event happen? The thing I was talking about is like the tortoise and the hare. If you change that to be a metaphor or a parable about, and you say it was a race between Jesus and Judas, all of a sudden archaeologists are going to tell you we found the racetrack, we found where they were, and we found the tree where Judas slept, and that's what allowed Jesus to beat him. And so people take these things too literally, but you don't take the tortoise and the hare literally, because you know that tortoise and hares don't schedule races with each other. And I think that's the thing to me that is interesting, but I feel like it's been happening for thousands and thousands of years. It seems like the priests of Egypt were so well versed in metaphor, but for the were the everyday person, were they super versed in this metaphor, or was it just this higher caste that really understood these symbols and really understood these things, and then became the teachers and said, look, we'll give you guys this information, but we can't tell you what it is. Instead, we're going to build this amazing structure out of massive stones in the middle of the desert, and we're going to let you guys talk about it, and then see if you can figure out what we're trying to convey to you. And I think it really is every lesson that we've all learned in our lives, the ones that you know for 100% sure is because you did it, and you're like, no, I know that's true because you didn't have to tell me.
You know the fire's hot. You know not to put your hand on a fireplace. That's like the first big that's burned into your memory. You're never going to forget that because it was such an experiential.
Yeah, and I think the really good teachers are the ones that, like you said, that say, look, I'm going to present you with this question, and you have to keep trying to solve it, keep trying to do it. To me, I think that if the mystery schools are these schools that teach this profound universal truth, to me the pyramid seems far more a teaching tool to teach those mysteries, and to say, we're going to leave it here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I mean, our textbooks, our schools of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria, you can burn them up. That pyramid, we're still talking about it. Yeah. We're still trying to figure it out. And
you know how when a baby's born, you spank the baby to start it breathing? That might have been the thing that sparked self-awareness in mankind, that we just kept seeing that thing. And I love that idea, the question machine. What's it called? Question generating machine?
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw that, but it was early on in my interest in all this stuff. And it really, in the idea of, like, again, that all of these ancient wisdom traditions were seeking gnosis, we're seeking Sophia. I mean, it seems like that we have these universities of Cambridge and Harvard and Yale, and we have these places where even today human beings are trying to achieve this pinnacle of knowledge. Well, why wouldn't our ancestors be the same way? Why wouldn't they be just as interested in trying to solve the riddle of this existence and solve the riddles of things work? And they just taught stuff in a way that was not the same way that we teach it. The thing that I always think about, if you gave somebody a medical textbook and you said, you gave it to a bunch of different people and you said, create some sort of art that visualizes all the knowledge that's in this textbook, probably not every single person, but most people would make like a mannequin of a body, and they would say, okay, we've made a visual work of art to show the information. How many people are going to make Karnak or Luxor? How many people are going to say, oh, you made a mannequin to show how the body works? I made this massive temple of stone that when you walk through it, you are receiving the same information that's in that textbook. Not only is the medical information in that textbook, we also threw in some astronomy and some physics and some other things in there too. So that to me is one of the most, you talk about, is it in Freemasonry, what's the definition of a masterpiece?
Oh, yeah. A masterpiece, it's a Masonic term. So there's a lot of words in the English language that are from Masonry. But the word masterpiece, which we all associate with a perfect work of art, is literally someone of a master mason, or better, in Masonry, is able to create a work of art that expresses the secrets of the universe. And so if a work of music, a work of literature, a work of sculpture, a work of graphic design, if it's a masterpiece, it communicates these central secrets of the universe. So, Da Vinci certainly, and all the Egyptian artwork, and maybe there's, a Led Zeppelin song that's a masterpiece. I mean, I can think of like Kashmir, or some Bob Dylan songs, or all the, the Bhagavad Gita and the Rig Veda and all of those old epic poems and epic songs. But yeah, that word masterpiece comes from about a baseball field is a Masonic thing with two compasses and the bases and everything. Baseball is a metaphor for masonry as well. But there's a lot of masonry seepage into the common vernacular, and that one is my favorite. It's something I really wanted to do a whole episode about because ostensibly the series really is still for artists, and I really want to continue to communicate these aesthetic secrets and aesthetic techniques. But it's so easy to in a way, that kind of pales in comparison to the profundity of this message that the art's transmitting. But I feel like you and I and Gary and everybody else in Magical Egypt were on a special vein because nobody's really brought attention to this fantastic age in art history where art and science were combined so perfectly. And in a way, there's certain types of science that can only be transmitted through art and through sculpture. And that's what we seem to have found in Egypt and what we're literally in the process of decoding in the Magical Egypt series.